Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for another C3UG video. My name is Graham Akers, coming to you from Vancouver. Colin?
Colin Breckles with Castlebrec in Ontario. Heiko?
Heiko Voigt with Harbour Light Software Development in Halifax. And guys, we have a special guest today again. A lot of my customers have been asking me lately about the latest release of HCL Domino Volt as the low-code platform for Domino. And we're happy to have Martin Lechleiter from HCL with us today to talk about one specific aspect of the offering, which is, from my understanding, the piece that helps us getting our feet wet with Domino Volt without the big hassle and overhead. So we're talking about the HCL Domino Volt Sandbox. And Marty, just before I get started, maybe you can introduce yourself and then let's get started with that. What's the Sandbox?
Yeah, thank you, Heiko. Again, Marty Lechleiter, I'm the product manager for HCL Domino Volt. And let's take a look at this new sandbox. All right, so let me share my screen. It's telling me host has disabled. Oh, there it goes. It's working. All right, so we're looking at the sandbox, and I'll make this bigger. So actually, I'll make it smaller so you can see the URL. Volt sandbox.hcltechsw.com. All right, I'm sure we'll pass this link along in some form, but it's not difficult to remember. All right, volt sandbox.hcltechsw.com. Now, once you get here, this is the page you see. And what you'll want to do is register for an account. All right. Now, the sandbox, the purpose of the sandbox is to allow you to use HCL Domino Volt, to learn, to experiment, to kick the tires, if you will. It's not a trial. It's a sandbox where you get an account and you can go back over and over again. It's going to be there. I won't say forever, but it's going to be there probably as long as you care that it's there. Nothing is forever. So it's really all about learning and experimentation, trying to develop your skills in the product. So the registration page is just your typical form, right? You can see the required fields. So we're not collecting too much information. A few things of note: your ID will become your first name and your last name. All right. And there's a little disclaimer at the bottom, and then you submit this. Now, since I already have an ID, I'm not going to submit this again. So let's go back to the sandbox page, and let's look at the other items here. So once you have an ID, there's access to the sandbox. If you have an ID, and let's say you forgot your password, you could always have it reset. And then if all else fails, you can click this particular link here, and this is going to go off to sandboxhelp@hcl-pmp.com. So it'll just fire off a support note to the sandbox team. All right, so accessing the sandbox, you just click here, and since I already have an account, and just before this video I logged in, I have a token which is sitting there, so it recognizes that, and it brought me right in, and you can see my first name and last name, right? And it's telling me that I don't have any applications. All right, so this is what you're going to see when you first get into the sandbox. Now, if you're brave and you know something about the product, you can just go in and create a new app. You can create it from scratch, and go ahead and see what the designer is all about. You can drag items onto the palette here. You can save it. You can preview it. But if you're like most customers, what you'll probably want to do is learn a little bit before you get into building some apps. So there's a number of good items under resources here in the Sandbox access page, again, which is at voltsandbox.hcltechsw.com. And one that I highly recommend is this step-by-step tutorial guide. So this will take you a good amount of time to complete. Yeah, I'm going to guess maybe 90 minutes to complete. And you don't have to do it all at once. You know, so you could do 30 minutes, come back to it, do another 30 minutes. And it takes you from some of the basic concepts in a stepwise fashion to creating some things that are pretty sophisticated and cool. And the step-by-step guide walks through the screenshots, as the name suggests here, it's step by step. So you can have this open in a window, and you can go through all the different pieces. And the beauty is that the artifacts that you need, they're all referenced via URL here. So it starts with a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet is actually referenced via a URL on this document. And if you need a little extra help, there's a tutorial.
Hi, this is Marty Lechleiter, the product manager.
So this tutorial essentially is me going through that step-by-step guide. And total length of this is 46 minutes. So you can see I was able to go to the front of the class and complete this in record time. But you can kind of watch the video segment. You can use the PDF. And then the idea is to go over to Domino Volt and try these things out and build your application. All right, so that's the step-by-step tutorial. You'll also find a number of good shorter tutorials. If you click this link here, this is actually in the product documentation, and you can see it's laid out in terms of starting with some of the basics to some of the more advanced topics like using workflow, multi-page, multi-forms, apps, etc. So this is all video, and these are fairly short segments of a video. So you go through, watch this, and then you could come back to the product, and you could try some things out there. All right, so we'll close a few of these windows down. All right, so again, back to this page. One that I highly recommend is that you look at sample apps. All right, so I've got a page that this links to, and there's a bunch of different applications which you can download. All right, and let's download this one, the animated quiz. So that's in my downloads folder. Now what I can do is come over to Domino Volt, and let's create a new application. In this case, from an existing. So one of the nice things about Domino Volt is that you can export and import applications. So I just downloaded an application which is in its export format. Now I'm going to import it. So I'll say from existing. And let's go find that application in my downloads folder. And when I'm creating this, I'm going to deploy it as well. And we'll import any data that it has. So you can export these applications with data. Perhaps you've got some tables that are used for lookup purposes stored in the application. So here's my application. I can launch it. So in this case, it's an animated quiz. So you see some animation. And it's asking me a number of questions. What kind of applications can you create with Domino Volt? Request, tracking, registrations, workflow. Well, I think all the above. I click this and it's scoring at 1. Which one is not true about Domino Volt? Great way to create web apps, generate Domino NSF files, a way to modernize Notes app, provide an API for data collected, generate forms and views. Well, I know it's not a way to modernize Notes apps. It's a way to generate web apps. So that one's correct. Stages are a form of workflow. And I'll go through the rest of these pretty quickly. Where Domino Volt apps run, they run in the browser. So Volt is built as a modern, single page application. And what that means is that when you open up the URL for an application, everything loads in your browser and runs there. The exception being when you click the submit button or do a service call to look up values if you have a call in your app. We'll click the correct answer there. And yeah, we can read and write JSON. And yeah, it's obvious that we support CSS animations. And I scored perfectly. So there's my first sample app that I downloaded. I can go grab some others. This
Actually, Marty, quick question.
Yeah.
In the quiz, I would have got question 2 wrong. I saw it. There was something about generating an API, and I'm curious about what it does there. Provide an API for data collected.
Oh, let's launch that quiz again and look at question 2. Provides an API for data collected. So every application that you create in Domino Volt automatically exposes the data that is in that application through a REST API.
Cool.
Provided you've allowed it. So you can set access privileges in your application. So if you've set the access privileges so that people can read it, well, then they can. The API honors whatever access settings you have in your application. All right?
Yeah, interesting. Thank you.
Okay, so what that means is you could have other software products interacting with your Domino Volt app through this API. The API supports full create, read, update, and delete services. So it could be a different form that you created in some web app that's interacting with it. It could be just a read. Maybe you're grabbing the data and doing some sort of reporting off of it, or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So the sample apps are they're all over the place in terms of the types of applications, but they teach you different techniques in the products, how to implement them. The step-by-step tutorial here, this is the finished app training request from the step-by-step tutorial.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to download this, and we'll just show that in Finder and then come back over to Volt. Let's say new application from existing. And let's just drag that over there. Let's deploy it, import the data. So this is what you'd create with the step-by-step tutorial. So it's doing a lookup in a course catalog, and that course catalog you create from a spreadsheet, and it's retrieving back information about the course that you've selected. You can also see that it's telling me how many seats are left. So with leadership, there's only 23 out of 25. Now, if I sign up for this, in my demos, I tend not to put required fields because they slow demos down. But if I sign up for this and then come back in and take a look at leadership, well, now it says 22 seats left because I just signed up for it. And I think, no, this one doesn't. So there's a version of this I have there that says you already signed up for this course. You can't sign up for it again. But I didn't build that into the step-by-step. But anyway, this is the app that you would build. And the course catalog, which is another piece piece of this is, a second page in the app. And you can see all the information here kind of in a spreadsheet-like view on the courses. So the idea is that you could manage a curriculum. You've got a form to go in and add classes. You can remove classes, change the dates, etc. And you build this app, which is using services between the catalog and the request form to communicate back and forth, to get information about what courses are offered, information about the one that you're interested in, and also how many seats are left. So that's coordinated through all three services. So a lot of good things you learn there. Other applications, I've got a few things open here in my browser. Leave requests, customer quotes, travel expense claim. This one actually does a lookup to get a translation rate from the Central Bank of Europe. It's a public API that anybody can access. So I threw it into the application. So if you want to put in your claim in dollars and see it in pounds or see it in euros, you can do that. I'm sure you can put Canadian dollars in there too, if you want to. Another application here which shows you how to set up multilingual applications. So if you want all of the labels and content in your application to have different translation strings, you can do that. And then recently I put an app in here for COVID inspections, right? A couple of these I've noted that they require secure JS equals false. So what that means is that these will not run in the sandbox, these last two. But if you do have a Domino instance set up with a secure JS equals false, which I do in a Docker image on my laptop, which I'll show you.
Is that setting up by app, or is it for the Volt instance?
No, it's for the Volt instance. And what it means is that for the instance, the use of JavaScript is sandboxed.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Volt sandbox, we've sandboxed the use of JavaScript. It sounds a little bit redundant, doesn't it? And what it does is it prevents users from using 100%, full JavaScript in that sandbox. The idea here is, since we don't necessarily know who's using the product or who's building applications, we want to limit what they can do with JavaScript, because if they're knowledgeable, they can do some malicious things. So you've got this ability in a scenario where users are not necessarily known or trusted to sandbox JavaScript. But if you know your users, well, then you can turn it off. So this application here, which I recently created, is one for doing COVID inspections. And I forget the full use of JavaScript here that I put into this, but I think 99% of this probably would run on the sandbox, but there's something I did add that prevents it from doing so. Oh, it's the link here. I'm doing a window command to go back and forth to different URLs. So these are inspections that I've done already. So you can see the inspection checklist, the score, and the way this works is you pick an inspection type. So maybe it's for the workplace reopening. These are the types of checklists for workplace reopening. Here's one for cleaning. Here's one for planning ahead. What you've got in place for hand washing and hygiene, physical distancing. And as you come into these, what you do is you score them. So that one's done. So you can see the score here is 13%. So what it's doing is it's calculating, based on the number of questions and which ones I've completed, what the score is. So if I say this one here is not complete, I also have to put in a comment that makes that mandatory. And I can say that is not complete. So far I only got one correct. If I get another one or I should say complete score changes again. If I take one out of the mix, saying it's not applicable, another comment. We want to know why if something's not applicable. Now the score changes because there's fewer questions that apply. So the idea is that you come through and you complete the checklist. As long as I'm on this one, let me just complete it all. Yep, we did that one. And this is a pattern that you see quite often with the product, audits, inspections. I like to think of it as I'm asking a few questions about quite a few number of different things. So you can see at this point, I've answered all these questions in the checklist. Now I can submit it. It's telling me I've submitted it. And you can see over here, it's keeping track of the fact that this checklist has been complete. All right, and I can go take a look at it. All right. So lots of good, interesting applications that you're going to see here. There's also another area that I encourage more of the technical types to go to, and this is a set of examples which I've published on using JavaScript libraries. So these are not so much finished sample applications, but rather more technical examples. And in this, I talk a little bit about how you can load JavaScript libraries in an application. And there's a couple of different techniques here, which I want to get into details on, but you're loading it via some JavaScript. And you can see that there's examples here that you can download for Moment.js. So if you want to do some fancy date and time calculations in display, you can do that. There's one here which shows how to integrate a written signature capability into your application. This next one takes it a step further. Integrate that written signature capability and generate a PDF and add the written signature to the PDF. This particular example here, TinyMCE, it's a powerful rich text editor. I've integrated it into an application so you can see how you can collect rich text and store it as web markup. And then JQplot, which builds on top of jQuery, Google Maps, and geolocation, and then a Google Translate. Most, if not all, of these are going to require that you've got full JavaScript. So if I come back over to, as an example, the Translate app. So the way this works is it loaded an app, a form, if you will, and it also loaded Google Translate. And I've got a little widget here that I'm displaying. And what I can do is change this to German as an example. All right, so you can see that it's changing the text everywhere. And the way Google Translate works is it just introspects the DOM and replaces everything for you. So that's sometimes very useful if you want multilingual without using the other technique that we show in the sample apps. The Google Map ones are very, very useful. So here I'm loading a Google Map as well as the library, the geolocation library, and I can make this bigger. Maybe we want to know what's the address right there. Well, that looks like it's 4-5 Grosvenor Place. What about right there? So it's picking up where I'm clicking, and it's putting the latitude, the longitude, and the address into the form. And then I also added another bit here where you can use the geolocation that's in your device, in this case my laptop, and you can see here that I'm on the North Shore of Massachusetts. So let's figure that out. So in all these applications, and you know, I'll show you here. You can go in, you edit, and you can see that they're not terribly complicated. So the first one I showed here is the quiz. The technique used here is that I've got one section with all the questions, right? And in this section, what I've done is set the display to carousel mode. So that's how I go question at a time. And then I use a little bit of JavaScript to score the question, right? So if the value is all the above, set the score to 1. Else, set it to 0. Right? So JavaScript is the language that you'll want to learn and use with the product if you're going to do any sort of custom calculations or custom behaviors. There's a very robust JavaScript API in the product in events. So in this case, this is the select one on change event. You know, you've got on show. Everything has events associated with it. So the form, when it's loaded, when it's new, when somebody clicks a submit button, when the submit buttons are shown, and you have a page which shows you all the events that you have, either a service call or some JavaScript associated with. So, you know, download the sample apps, look at them, play with them, use the tutorials, you know, learn and play. And it comes back to the focus of this session, which is, you know, learning how to use Domino Volt. All right. There are some other very interesting resources, or very good resources. There's a wiki that we've created. So in here, you can go through all kinds of different useful, you know, techniques and things on, you know, for example, understanding the rules wizard. You know, this is very well documented. Shows it to you in a manner to explain it thoroughly. Maybe you're working with date fields. Lots of different things here that people have been trying to do. You know, add days to a working date, or add working days to a date, add days to a date. Maybe you're trying to do some things with tables, check a table for an entry, move things around, you know, styling things. So there's a bunch here on how to style applications. So that's the wiki. And then there's the community forum. In the community forum, I've actually been in and out of, as I've showed you the sample applications. And this is, if you go to the support page, you can get to this. Well, you can also get to it with Sandbox. It's an authenticated forum. You can, you know, browse and look at answers and questions without signing up. But if you get in, then you can answer questions and ask questions. And you can see that some of the information that's here has been pinned to the top of the forum, like the sample apps. All right. But this is quite active. You know, a lot of questions. This is where if you just want to, you know, bounce something against the team here and get their input on how to do something, you're going to find you're going to get an answer right away. If not from somebody at HCL, then perhaps by somebody else who's learning the product. And then finally, you've got an ideas portal. This is something that I find very interesting because it tells me what people want to see in the product. And I like this view here by what's most popular. And you know, it shows me a lot of people want a search box. They also want an alias for fields because they want to use their applications in Notes in addition to in the browser. So, you know, for the product team, this is really good. You know, for customers and partners, of course, you can see what other people want and you can add your 2 cents in here. So that's, you know,
Marty, Sorry,
Go ahead.
Marty. I see that this is the Domino AHA portal that you've specifically categorized by Volt. So it's not a separate ideas portal from the Domino one.
Well, it's under Domino, but it is
Yeah,
its own.
yeah. Just thinking that for people who are comfortable using the Domino one, it's the same place, and you just
Yes,
categorize
yes,
your
yes,
questions
yes.
under Volt.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's fantastic.
All right. So that I think I've covered everything here. Now, this is the beginning, and what we're trying to do is, build this out even more. The model that we kind of espouse to is, the Salesforce trailhead. We want to have a destination where people can go, and it's a developer destination. Whether you're a customer or a partner, go there and learn. The more people that become familiar with and able to build these applications, the better off we're all going to be. The ecosystem's going to thrive. The product's going to do better. Customers are going to get more value out of it. So, with a developer-oriented product, this is extremely important for us to foster its use with tools like this. But there's a lot more in the works that we have. But just getting this sandbox out there for people to play with is a great place to start. Now, I will also add that by the end of this month, we will have a Domino Volt trial image, a Docker trial image, which you can download. That will give you the ability to take the product, install it wherever you want, integrate it with your directory, use full JavaScript, do what you want with it. It's gonna teach you more about the product than the Sandbox can. The Sandbox is a shared instance. When you access the Sandbox, it's not your Sandbox. It's everybody's using the same Sandbox. Now, the way the Sandbox works is, I'm Marty Lechleiter. I'm in here. I'm only seeing Marty Lechleiter's applications, right? But there are others that are out there that are on this, and they see their applications. Unless they've added me to their admin list for an app, then I might see it as well. But because of this, you really, it's difficult to build true workflow applications. With true workflow applications, you need to do directory lookups. You need to know that it's your directory. You can build this out unless you've got a handful of people that have signed up for the Sandbox and you're building the workflow between you. I mean, you can do that. But it's not going to teach you as much, I think, about the install, the admin, some of the underlying services that are there that having a Docker image would. In my case, I've got a Docker image on my laptop, which one of the beauties of Docker is, stick it on your Windows or Mac laptop. If you want to stick it on a server, you can do that too. And then I've got a Notes client, which is able to point to different key files which are out on this instance. So I can see my configuration settings here. And this is where you would set the secure JS to either true or false. All right, so the configuration is all done through either Designer or Notes. And I can see for the different apps, I have different NSFs that are created under the covers. All right, I've got my directory, my mailbox.
The one question I have, and I'm afraid that you've already answered it, but you can create a sample application in the Sandbox and then download it so that you can run it on your own Volt server once you get to that point?
Yes. So if I build something new, or if I want to take any of these which are running in my Sandbox, you can export them.
Awesome.
All right, and then somebody else can then import them. So the file that we create, it's a .volt file, and it contains everything to recreate that application, including data, optionally including data. So the application is all defined in one big XML file, and then the package also includes any of the artifacts for running the application.
Cool. Thank you.
Marty, thanks for sharing that with us. That was amazing. Really shows how truly easy it is for somebody to get started with the Sandbox and start experiencing Volt. And it's exciting to hear about the forthcoming Docker container. So we'll definitely have you back to talk about that once it's available. And as always, everybody, thanks for spending your time with us. Take a moment to give us a thumbs up on the video and subscribe if you haven't, and click that bell icon so you get the notifications when new videos come out. Also helps us be seen. Thanks a million. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.